Doug Karsch, Scott Anderson, 97.1. Lots going on in Detroit sports. The biggest story of which is, of course, the Dylan Larkin saga with the Detroit Red Wings, in which is already was looking like it was going to be an offseason that might have some movement. And then the Red Wings' best player, or arguably their best player, certainly one of their best players, goes out and says, tells Steve Yzerman he wants to be traded. And the news cycle spins and spins and spins, and we've taken all the information we could find today. We put it in one place. We call it the Red Wing Trade Center, spelled CENTRE, news aggregate thingy. All right, Scott, we'll start with a rumor about somebody other than Dylan Larkin. Sebastian Kosa, NHL rumor report, quotes Elliot Friedman, saying, quote, I think Edmonton has some interest and maybe it does happen, but this morning I was told it's nowhere near to as far along as being portrayed. Meanwhile, Kevin Weeks, per sources, says, quote, I'm told Kosa would be on the move to Utah amongst interested clubs. Also, maybe the Rangers or Senators, quoted in that tweet. Scott, what do you make of the possibility of Kosa? Because the rumors got out there that it was a done deal to Edmonton. That was going around social media.
I mean, I've said for months that I think Sebastian Kosa is going to be traded. I think the second that Postova got the nod over him in the playoffs, you got to think, okay, that's the end for Sebastian Kosa, and they have to make their decision on him because he's getting close to a free agent time here. So I think it makes sense. They have plenty of depth in with goaltending prospects with Postova and Augustine, and they got a couple other guys that have fared pretty well at the lower levels. So it makes sense to move him. Does it make sense to move him on a separate deal from Dylan Larkin? I'm not sure. It depends what teams you're looking at. But Kosa played his minor league hockey at Edmonton. So I guess that's why the rumor's going to get started there. But these other teams they're deep in prospects, particularly the Mammoth. They got a lot. So I definitely would expect him to get moved. I'm just not sure if it's going to be moved separate from Larkin or with Larkin.
So the one thing I wonder about when the rumor starts around that it's a done deal, it makes me think that, well, here's what's possible. Edmonton has a trade package that Detroit would accept, but Yzerman's going to keep shopping. So when I always wonder when I see rumors that something is a done deal, that might be just a misinterpretation of, well, Detroit would accept what Edmonton's offering, but they're not going to take it just yet. They're going to keep looking and see if they can get more. So I'm kind of intrigued by this a little bit because Kosa is a name that's been floating around for a long time and is considered still a reasonably good goalie prospect. All right, next up, NHL rumor report quoting Chris Johnson on his radio show, the Athletics Hockey Insider. I don't see Steve Yzerman making a bad deal just for the sake of having the problem disappear. I think he's willing to dig in. What do you make of this?
I agree with that 100%. I don't think Yzerman is looking at this situation and going, oh no, I have to move him. My back's against the wall. Dylan Larkin signed for 5 more years at a very reasonable price. And, even for what the Red Wings are looking at, they've already paid him the majority of the money on the contract because it was front loaded. Now for teams that want to deal with him, it's still the annual 8.75 or whatever it is that they're going to have to go against the cap. But from a Red Wings money standpoint, he's already gotten paid a decent amount of this. So I don't think there's any reason for Steve Yzerman to panic or feel like he's being rushed into making a move. I think he should get full value or what he deems full value for Dylan Larkin. And the worst case scenario is that they don't make a trade this summer and Dylan Larkin has to come back to the Wings. Now, part of that's going to be a negotiating thing, right? Because you're trying to get Larkin to open up how many teams he's willing to go to. So we'll see how this plays out. But, I can't imagine that Yzerman was too happy when, okay, what teams you're looking at? And here come 3 names, and they're all, top contenders. Good luck with that.
There have been 2 high-profile cases when Steve Yzerman was in Tampa of trade requests. One of them was Jonathan Drouin.
Yeah.
He requested the trade in November of 2015. Do you know when he got traded?
Was it a year later?
It was June of 2017.
Yeah, because I remember he had to come back to the team, And he came back and he was an improved player.
Yeah.
Like it was an attitude adjustment type thing, but he was also a lot younger.
The point being, Yzerman has dug in the past and hasn't sold his player for what he deemed the right value. At least he did it in Tampa. Now, it feels like everything he did in Tampa worked better than everything he's doing in Detroit, but there's an example of what he had a similar challenge in the past, which brings us to the second part of this. Pierre LeBrun says, my prediction, and it hasn't happened yet, Steve Yzerman will go back to Dylan, if it hasn't happened yet, Steve Yzerman will go back to Dylan Larkin and extend that trade list. There's no question in my mind. If it hasn't already happened, it will. Which brings us to the second time he had a player that requested a trade in Martin St. Louis. Do you know how deep his list was when he told Steve Yzerman he wanted to be?
I do not.
It was one team.
Was it Montreal?
It was one team, and it was the New York Rangers.
Oh, that's all.
And he ended up spinning Martin St. Louis into 2 first-round picks because one was a second-round pick that could become a first-round pick. And that, at the time, the Rangers captain, Ryan Callahan. That is a great trade for Tampa, given that they traded a 38-year-old, and the list was one team. So Yzerman's been faced with short lists before, and he pulled off a great trade in that particular instance. But I agree with Pierre LeBrun. If he hasn't already asked him to expand the list, he will, because the hockey world is kind of making fun of Larkin's list. Not Detroit people.
Right.
Everybody is making fun of
Yeah, I think
list.
he's getting lit up right now, and rightfully so. But again, I keep going back to this. It's a negotiation. You know, if you're going to ask me, hey, I'm asking for a trade. So, okay, where do you want to go? Well, here's my first choice, my second choice, my third choice. And that's where I'd like to go. And then, okay, present that. And after maybe, I don't know how many seconds it took, but I imagine Steve Yzerman was like, great, yeah, we'll work on this. Where else?
All right, and final note here. Of the teams on the list, which are Vegas, Florida, and Minnesota, there was a trade proposal from the Minnesota Wild that was printed on The Athletic where the Red Wings get goalie Jesper Wallstedt, forward Danila Yurov, and forward Charlie Stramel from Michigan State. Minnesota gets Larkin and Sebastian Kosa. How would you feel about this return? Because this seems to be the one that has the most traction as a possible deal.
Stramel went to Michigan State, played a year there. I think he also played at Wisconsin, and was 44 points in 37 games for the Spartans.
Really good last year.
He's a good player. He's a really, really nice player.
Physical player.
And I like him. And Wallstedt is, he was the guy that was taken after Sebastian Kosa in the draft, but he's made it to the NHL, and he's very highly regarded as a goaltender. But they already have a goaltender in Minnesota, so that's why he's on the trade block. The Red Wings don't need one. So, trading Kosa as part of it to get, this doesn't seem like the right deal. This sounds like, okay, we're desperately trying to find a way to get Dylan to one of his places he wants to go, and I'm not willing to help him out. I don't think that works for me.
Nobody likes this trade. Let me just say that. It seems to be the one that has the most traction of the Athletic trades, but nobody seems to think that this would be a good trade for Detroit. I'm not as worried about getting Wallstedt, and the reason is because the Red Wings, yes, they're loaded with young goalies. Then they start trading those guys off for players. Like you can then trade, move Augustine. I bet Augustine would get you something good.
Well, this is why I've also said that I think if you're looking at a team like Minnesota, I think you're going to have to get a third team involved.
You might.
Because it's going to involve goaltenders, and if you're doing that, then let's get somebody else involved to get even more assets for Detroit to make it make sense. But going straight Detroit, Minnesota for that package, and the Red Wings giving up Kosa too, that doesn't work.
Yeah, I like it because they have a guy who's NHL ready and who's considered better than Kosa at this point. It would take a bitter pill to swallow because you could have drafted him. Instead, they took Kosa. And then watch Kosa have a better career.
Kosa actually played outstanding last year. He just got outplayed at the end, and Postova got the chance to play in a playoff.
Well, between Postova, Augustine, and Kosa, they have a wealth of goalie riches, and you could start moving guys. You just start moving guys, and trading in those assets for assets on the blue line.
Yeah, they got a fourth, too. There's this guy, Rudy Guimond, is another one who's awfully good. So,
all right, there you go. That is the very latest on the Dylan Larkin trade front. Also, Sebastian Kosa will continue to monitor it and, of course, be updating it moving forward. Our Detroit Red Wings Trade Center News Aggregate Update. We'll get back to some Tiger stuff next. Open lines, 248-539-9797. If you want to talk more about Larkin and the Wings, it is Karsch and Anderson here on 97.1.